All right, welcome to my channel if you're just joining us and to this video. This is one video in a series that I'm doing called How to Tile Your Shower. That's right, we are renovating this bathroom, this shower from scratch, DIY style. So in previous videos, I rebuilt the drain and we leveled and prepped the shower pan and installed the shower pan. So in this video, I'm going to get you to this point. We're going to be installing 1/2-inch HardieBacker cement backer board right here. Also show you how to build out the walls a little bit so the cement backer board fits nice and flush over the shower pan lip, the little flange at the bottom, the top of your fiberglass shower pan. And we're also going to be adjusting the handle and the valve, making it, putting it at the proper depth so it doesn't stick out too far or recess too far into the wall. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is take a piece of scrap wood that's going to represent how deep my cement backer board and the little buildup that I have to make so that it's nice and flush with that drywall. I don't know if you saw it there. In other words, we need to build out the wall about that far. We want the finished product, once the backer board is installed like this, to be flush. Look at that. Perfect, right? So how do we do that? How do we get to that point where I'm going to take some 2x4 pine and I'm just going to rip it right down the middle, about 80 inches. It happens to be the height of my particular context or my setup here. And I'm going to measure that out exactly, okay? So it might be 1/8 of an inch. It might be, 3/8. It might be 1/4 of an inch. But the idea is to build that up so that when you install your backer board over it, it's going to go right over that flange, that lip on your shower pan, but also be flush with your existing drywall, right? So you can take, some shims and kind of figure out what the exact, compare it to your cement backer board, how thick that is, and figure out how far out you need to go. Yeah, you got to do a little math, unfortunately, but it's not terribly problematic. But I will say it's really important to make sure that you have your shower pan installed correctly and squarely, right? So anyway, we're going to build up our entire wall, basically any plane that we need to put the backer board on. It has to be all on the same plane, right? We're going to make strips. Now I will take a moment to fix any drywall from the demo process. Specifically, this corner could be problematic. There looks to be some weak points there, so I'm going to put some drywall repair patch on there and let that dry. So that corner is nice and strong. With our strips up and our walls built out a little bit, our studs, we're ready to take our cement backer board and go ahead and cut that and install. Now I'm going to show you a variety of different cuts in this video, but this shower pan calls for keeping your cement backer board about 1/8 of an inch off of the bottom. So I'm going to take some spacers, little rubber spacers. You could use some wood shims too, but just be careful you don't scratch your pan, and place that there. Now I'm going to prep my drill. For non-corner backer, I use these backer board screws. These are highly recommended. I don't really use anything else. They're 1 5/8 inch deep, and I have an electric drill for the non-corners and non-edges. That gets me enough power. I don't have to worry about recharging my battery. However, with the corners, along the corners and the edges, so I don't break, because that drill is so powerful, right? It'll put that screw through it real fast. And I don't have to worry about it going, too deep. It pretty much, these screws stop pretty much flush too. I mean, it will go through if you, give it a lot of force there, but it should stop kind of like that. And then for edges and corners, like I said, I pre-drill, and I'll use my battery-powered drill to do those because I don't want to crack those edges. This stuff's pretty durable, but it does crack. So here you can see me using my level to get a nice vertical. I got that top screw in the stud, and then I'm going to mark. It calls for every 8 inches. I'm going to do every 6 to 7 inches just to be safe. I needed 2 boxes, so I might as well of screws, so I might as well use them all anyway. Now this particular cut on backer board, this 1/2-inch HardieBacker, I've got this special little scoring tool. It's only like a few bucks, and by the way, I'll put a link in the description below for all the tools and whatnot that you see in this video if you are interested in that. But it's really simple. I take a straight edge and clamp it down, and then just score it just like this several times, nice and deep. And you might want to use your shop vac to get out some of that dust. It makes your cut a little more efficient, so you're not cutting over that dust again and again. I don't know, maybe that's neurotic of me and it's not really necessary, but I found that it seems to cut deeper and more efficiently if you have a little shop vac out. Now, as far as cutting, you could put it on the ground and brace it and just use a hammer to break it. That works really well too. Also, you could consider doing a pliers. I don't have a lot of space to actually score this. There's not a lot of leverage, right? You can see what a narrow cut this is. So I've got all the time in the world here, right? So I might as well take my time and control every bit of this. It doesn't have to be a perfect cut, but I don't want it. I don't want to ruin this entire board because I messed up, you know, an inch or so. That is a critical inch. So I prefer to take my time and cut, you know, efficiently and accurately one time. All right, so that kind of gives you an idea. Now, you could potentially, if you have a saw with a carbide tip or a metal cutting tip of some type. I don't prefer this. I don't really use it actually, but I did set it up for you. See what it looks like. It has a forced air evacuation system because you're not supposed to cut this cement backer board. It can create a lot of silica dust and be quite harmful to your health. So, but it is possible if you're working outdoors and you have a shop vac that hooks up to your tool and you have the right blade and whatnot. Another option for narrow cuts like this is to use a shears. Yep, like a garden shears, right? It's a little, I prefer the pliers over the shears to be honest, but it does get a pretty clean break, a pretty clean cut. You lose control the last as you kind of clamp down and snap it. You don't have a lot of control there. And so you might have some fragmentation, but it is a possibility for you. You might want to practice a little bit if your backer board doesn't have pre-scored marks, or if you don't have a better way to do this. So anyway, those are some options, and you can go along with your carbide tip scorer and clean it up kind of like that. You could also take a hammer, the edge of a hammer, or you could kind of gently pound some of that out with the hammer. It kind of flakes off a little bit. But anyway, this is kind of the cut that I needed to do to get that in. It wasn't 60 inches exactly. These are 3x5 sheets, and my opening the cut that I needed here was like, I don't know, 59 1/4 or something close to that. So I had to shave off just a little bit on 2 of these panels. Now, pretty soon I'll show you how to score and snap if you're interested in that, and also how to cut out holes for your shower, your shower arm, your shower head, and your valve and your handle and all that good stuff. So this is me installing the second piece here, and we're not going to secure it all in every 6 inches at this point. I'm just kind of dry fitting, so to speak. I do have about 1/8 of an inch gap in between the boards and the walls. They're not touching each other. There's some mixed reactions online in terms of who likes to put gaps on them and who doesn't, but the instructions, HardieBacker instructions, seem to say we recommend 1/8 of an inch, so that's what I'm going to do, and I've done that before in previous bathroom installations. So here's another cut that we're going to do along that perpendicular wall. No, this is the same wall, just that upper part. So we've got 2 panels on that long wall, and then a third part of a panel up here. And it's like 20 something inches. So I'm just measuring really well and scoring this. And I'll show you the snap and score here. It's pretty simple, and I would say probably the fastest way. But you might run into this problem if you've got 1/2 inch. You've scored it, but then you kind of, okay, it's not really snapping, right? And maybe that depends on how big your muscles are, but I ran into this problem. So I took a little piece of wood and braced it. Look where I braced it, really close to the scoring line. And then I pushed on the longer side. That created enough leverage for it to be a pretty nice break. So you'll want to practice this if possible, if you've never done this before, because that it could result in a break that's not clean if you've never done this. All right, we're transitioning now to this part of it. We're going to set our shower valve depth. Now, this is an advantage. You have access behind the studs, right? So you can reset this however you want. So we're going to put our plaster ground, this little black piece that comes equipped with, I think, most shower fixtures. This is a Moen PosiTemp shower valve, and this is how it works. You screw in the plaster ground. That's what you call this little black piece here. And that's kind of your guide. And you're supposed to set that about right like that, according to the instruction. That scrap wood represents the finished wall, by the way, with the cement backer board on there and the tile and the thin set. So I've kind of pre-measured that, so to speak. So I'm just testing it right now. I'm building a little imaginary wall before I put up my drywall to see how deep I want my shower valve and handle to be. So I'm going to dry assemble everything here. Yes, I'll screw it in tight, but I'll be unscrewing it all. And I'm just going to get a feel for, okay, is this where I want things to be? Now, this particular shower valve or shower handle that I bought had great reviews. It looks awesome, all finished up and everything. However, the handle kind of stuck out a little too far for a lot of people. So I'm going to try to avoid that if I can, because again, I have the advantage of setting this shower valve as deep or shallow as I want it to. So I'm going to assemble these 3 plastic pieces here, and then I will put on the handle just so you can get an idea, and I'll tighten up that set screw underneath. And that's kind of how I want things to be. I don't want that shower or that stop, that long tube right there, to stick out any further toward me, because it's going to make that handle look like it's sticking out, if that makes sense. And so I want that escutcheon plate to be as close to the back of the handle as possible to minimize that gap. I think it just looks nicer. So that's kind of where I want it to be as the finished product. Okay, so now now that I kind of have that, I'm going to set my shower arm back a little bit. So I'm going to unscrew that stud and just kind of push it back and then re-screw it in. Okay, so notice that black plaster ground is not flush with the finished wall. So Moen, I completely disagree with your assessment here. You need to actually set that back into the wall a little bit further, and I'm going to measure for you to show you how far back that is. So let's go ahead and kind of take things off. We'll disassemble everything again, and it looks like that black plaster ground, when it's tightened to the valve, should sit, for this particular handle, in my opinion, about 5/8 inch back from the finished wall, not flush. So that was a lesson that I learned, and I'm glad I did that. Next, we will mount the shower valve to a 2x4 in the back. You can see there it was not mounted before with the fiberglass insert. So I took care of that, and I'm going to basically do the same thing for my shower arm. I'm just going to take that piece of scrap wood that represents the finished wall edge and just mark my shower arm, see how deep it is. You don't have to do that last step if you don't want to. All right, so I'll take that shower arm off, and it's time to make the cut for the handle and the valve. Now, the black plaster ground that we saw earlier is about 4.5 inches in diameter. I'm going to make my cut about 5 inches because I want a little extra play. That's not going to be too big of a hole that the escutcheon plate won't cover. So I'm comfortable with that. It took me a couple times to get that measurement right. And if you've never cut a hole in cement backer board before, you're going to basically do something like this. Do a nice controlled first score around your markings, just like this. And then you'll make a series of kind of pizza pie or pizza or pie, I guess, or pizza pie, just like this, some slices. And how many is kind of up to you. Looks like I have 8 or so there, maybe 10. And if you can't, now you're going to want to support it from the underside. I have this up on sawhorses. One tip here, if it's not breaking, go ahead and drill a hole through the middle with one of your cement backer board screws, or any screw, I suppose, will be fine. Go ahead and put a hole through there, and then that should pop it out or make it a little more fragile so your hammer can get down in there. And then from there, it's just a matter of kind of in a controlled way, knocking out the rest of that. You could also use a pliers, again, if you have a little more time on your hands and you want to have a little more control over your brakes. It shouldn't go outside that score line. If you hammer it, it shouldn't go outside that score line if your score line is deep enough, but it might. And, you know, a pliers is kind of a way to have a little more control over that. You can kind of snip off the edges, kind of crumple them down. They kind of dry up and flake off just like that. Or you can take your hammer and gently, well, firmly, right, but in a controlled way, kind of hit out the bottom part of that, because the bottom will stick out a little bit more. The top flakes off and breaks off easier, but your bottom might actually reduce your diameter a little bit. So you kind of do this, you kind of pound it downward and then inward to make that a pretty perfect looking circle. If you ask me, not to brag, but it doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to get, obviously, enough clearance for this black plaster ground to come in and out, which represents, you know, serviceability and getting your hand in there and whatnot at a later date if you need to repair, you know, getting your pin out of there if you need to change the cartridge or whatnot. So that's kind of it and how it should look, or at least how I did it. I'm no pro, I'm no plumber. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just a homeowner taking on a massive project here, but it's fun. All right, and I'll just dry fit this one more time just to be sure. I had some shims up there to represent that outer finished edge, and it looked good. This also may be a good opportunity to get out your new shower head and just kind of hold it up to make sure everything goes in the appropriate place and that you're happy with it. Because before you put your backer board up, before you finish everything, you know, you want to do that beforehand. All right, so I'm continuing here with my cuts and screwing in all of my backer board appropriately spaced. I also have my little shower shelving, my niche shower, I think that's how you say it, the shower niche, that will be finishing up here in another video. But I basically cut out long strips for the shelves and the sides as well. And you want to get those nice and flush. Don't overdo it. Don't underdo it. If they stick out too far, it's going to affect your laying your tile. You want everything to be nice and flush once it's up. There's another shot for you. There's another shot at the 1/8 inch spacing and the gaps throughout. Things are looking okay, I think. No red flags at this point. Now I'll put in the backer board for the shower head. And I do have this little brass nipple installed just to make sure I can, if you don't have to have your shower arm or anything in there, but I like to see it fit to give me an idea of how much clearance there is. Sometimes that's hard to eyeball. All right, be careful on the edges with your screws. As I mentioned before, you might want to consider pre-drilling if you have to get too close to the edge. They say you can go up to 3/8 of an inch, but I've had a success, and then other times I've kind of snapped or you know, cracked an edge. So if you do crack an edge, if you do have repair, now would be a good time to do that before you seal everything up with your tape. Make a really small batch of thin set, peanut butter like consistency, and just get it kind of worked in the seams, kind of like you're super gluing it on in a way, right? Make sure that it's there and pressed up, and it has backing on the other side of it. Make sure there's some wood or whatnot on the other side of it. Next up, we have our special tape. This is specifically for cement backer board. Don't buy the drywall stuff, that will rot. You want this stuff. This is supposed to be more durable and can, you know, hold up to cement backer board and wet conditions and whatnot. And we're going to make another batch of thin set, and we will apply that just to cover up those seams. We want to create a completely monolithic surface. So I'm even going to do that on my corners. I don't know if that is what you're supposed to do, but before we waterproof this, and we'll be doing that in another video with RedGuard, we need to make sure that that waterproofing membrane has a place to be. So I'm going to overlap it equal parts. So it's a 2-inch strip of fiberglass, or fibra tape, it's called fiber tape. And you want, 1 inch on one side, inch on the other for the most part, and get that thin set worked in there and as thin as possible. We'll be sanding it here in a second, but this is basically how you do it. All your seams, one nice monolithic surface. And in a final step, we will gently sand down the seams once everything is nice and dried. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that is basically how you do it. And we'll stop the video there. In the next video, we're going to be waterproofing this using our famous RedGuard waterproofing membrane. So be sure to subscribe or stay tuned for that. Thanks.